We're going to talk about diodes here, and hopefully I've got enough of my markers here. We're going to do get out of the way there. Diodes. Okay. And a lot of people want to refer to diodes as electrical check valves, which is completely okay to me. I don't have a problem with that. But what you have to remember is that even a hydraulic check valve doesn't work on flow. Check valves work on pressure. Okay, so the pressure is what pops the valve open. The pressure is what unseats the ball in the oil pressure relief valve. So you got the ball in the pressure relief valve right there, right? And then you've got the oil passage there. And then you got the spring here, right? So what happens is that the fluid comes in here, but that's under pressure. And then we have a threaded oil pressure adjustment here, right? And as we screw that in, this pressure here and this pressure here fight. So it's spring tension versus oil pressure or whatever pressure. Okay, so it's the pressure that actually unseats it. And you have to remember that in electricity, pressure is voltage. Okay? Pressure is voltage. So electrical pressure is voltage. Okay, I guess I probably could have written that there. Well, I'll write it there too. What the hell? Okay. So voltage is electrical pressure. Might as well be thorough, right? So the thing you have to remember is that even though a diode allows flow, diodes are pressure devices. They operate on voltage. They don't operate on current. They operate on voltage. So voltage, a change in voltage, a pressure differential, a difference in voltage is going to make the diode work. Okay, so I want to start out with some fairly relevant but maybe a little vague thing here, just to kind of illustrate something. The reason Silicon Valley is called Silicon Valley is because everything pretty much in Silicon Valley is made of silicon, and silicon, not silicone, silicon, chemical symbol Si. The chemical symbol Si for silicon. It's basically glass. I mean, literally, that's what it is. And if you remember, glass is a very good insulator, right? Right. So glass is a really good insulator. So how is silica, how does it do what it does? Well, the reason it does what it does is because silica is really, 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 really stable. Okay? I'm hoping I'm going to be able to enlarge this and not lose much resolution, but there you go. There's silica. Silica has a very stable electron structure. Okay, and the electrons, if you remember, are the things that spin around, and electrons are the current flow. So it's the movement of electrons that is the movement of electricity. And in silica, this is really, really, really stable. And it's three-dimensional, so it's not just two-dimensional, it's three-dimensional. So this stuff is stacked, and these electrons are spinning around, and they share orbits. And there's really no place for any other electrons to go. So if another electron comes whizzing along in here, when it hits the silica, it kind of gets stopped. And the reason it gets stopped is because it's nowhere for it to go. Okay? So, that makes glass a really good insulator. Well, that means it's a non-conductor. It's an insulator. An insulator is a non-conductor, right? Okay, so non-conductor, insulator, same thing. Well, the reason the word conductor is important is because silicon can be made into a semiconductor. Okay? And the semiconductor means that it sometimes will and sometimes won't conduct. So what they do is they take silica and they heat it up really, really hot. If you know what that means all these electrons are whizzing around and the bonds loosen up. And they will dope it with either phosphorus, which is P, or they will dope it with boron. And the interesting thing about phosphorus and boron, and there's some other stuff they'll do too. I mean, there's more than just those. There's several more. There's gallium arsenide and all this kind of weird crap that I don't really know much about. Oh, I didn't mean that to be silica. Let me change that. It's boron. Sorry. So boron and silica have the unique characteristics of being one row off on the periodic table, which means that one of them has one more electron and one of them has one less electron. And I'm going to go online and make sure I'm not going to screw this up because I think I know. Here's what I'm going to predict. If I remember right, P phosphorus is not positive, it's negative, so I think it has one extra electron. And boron, I think, has one less electron, which makes it positive. So I'll explain that in a minute. But while I'm gone, discuss amongst yourselves whether or not any of this matters to you at all. And I'll be back in just a second, and we can continue where we left off. So hold on. Be right back. Okay. Yay! I was right. I thought I remembered that right. See, that's how I remembered it, because P is positive, but actually it's negative. So phosphorus is one row past and boron is one row less. So here's what happens here. The silica is the silica, and it has, its normal sort of complement of electrons here. And remember, this is three-dimensional, not two-dimensional. So phosphorus is slightly negative, so that means since electrons are negative, it has one extra electron. And what that means is that this extra electron right there makes this negative. So it makes it negative silica. All right, and boron has one less. I keep doing this because I want you guys to think about how strong that looks. I mean, that looks very, very stable, right? There's really no place for electrons to go unless you give them someplace to go. So what we end up with is one less. See if I draw this right without screwing it up. Yeah, one less. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Should have 8. Yeah, that's right. So we're missing one. So that makes this slightly positive. So what we end up with is positive and negative silicon. This is called doping, and that's what they do in these, factories out in California. They heat this silica up, and then they bombard it with boron and you know, and the electrons are like zinging around, and electrons are going everywhere. You know, they're going, oh no, whatever. Electrons going zing, 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 and boron and they're shoving things out, you know, and electrons are like zinging around, going everywhere, you know. So it's very hot. Okay, it's like a furnace, right? It takes a long time, and effectively what they do is the heat and the bombarding, the silica goes bing, and some of the silica pops out, and then some phosphorus takes its place, and some of the bing, silica pops out, and boron takes its place. So silica goes from being an exceptionally good insulator, which is a non-conductor, to a semiconductor, right? So sometimes it'll conduct, sometimes it won't. You know, sometimes you feel like a nut, sometimes you're never mind. So how does this work for us? Well, you know, here's how I explain it. Okay, if I can find my magnets, I'll throw the magnet example in here, but I'm not sure where they are, so I'll have to see what I can do. So at any rate, the first thing is, if you remember from one of the other videos, the electrons are negative, right? So there's an electron, and there's an electron there, and they're negative, and because they both have the same charge, these guys really don't want to be anywhere near each other. And I always try to use green for magnetism and charges like that, because I just do. So a little bit of color there, Technicolor. All right, so this force field, if you will, whatever you want to call it what you will, it's like a spring, right? So let me see if I can find a better color. I'll use blue. It's like a spring, right? So spring. So the spring tends to push those electrons apart because opposite charges attract and like charges repel. Okay, so this guy, they want to get away from each other. That's why in here they're going zing, 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 just like spinning at like unbelievable speeds. Okay, so this is voltage. This is what voltage is. It's the desire for these guys to like not be near each other. So they push away from each other. Well, that's voltage. Well, there's voltage. Voltage is electrical pressure. So there's the connection right there. So we create the semiconductor, okay, by taking silica and going ding, 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 boo, playing pinball with it, whatever. Ooh, I left a couple of things off here. That was bad. Okay. Okay, so if you hear my son in the background, it's because it's snowing and they're off and they're running around crazy. And this is the South, in which case, if they even say the word snow, boo, we just don't go to school. It's weird. So those of you in the North and in Canada and everywhere can laugh at us, and we deserve it. So here's what we got. We got these guys don't want to be near each other, but they do want to fill in empty spaces. So in this particular case, this doesn't really want to take any more electrons because it's got an extra one there, whereas this one would accept an electron. So this is referred to as having a hole, H-O-L-E, because there's an empty spot there, right? So there's an empty space here somewhere. There's an empty spot right there. And this is the hole. Can we see that? Yeah, it looks like we can see that. Okay. So there's nothing there. Okay. So what can I say? Okay. So all of this is the build up to a diode, all right? Because diodes essentially work on static electricity. Because what we do is we take a diode, which is going to have two sides. Okay, so I got a positive side here, and got a negative side here. Put a light bulb there, put a battery there, and the battery will be there. And let's put it in quote-unquote proper polarity. So plus here, minus here. This is what's called forward bias. The word bias means to lean, so it's kind of leaning in the forward direction. Okay. Well, then let's do the exact same thing, but let's go the other way around. So let's make it negative here and positive here. And we'll put a bulb in there. Okay, it's one of several bulb symbols. And we'll do this. And there's my battery. And we'll make this positive. We'll make this negative. And this is what's called, go figure, reverse bias. Meaning that it's kind of leaning in the other direction. And forward and reverse should kind of give you a clue, right? What have I told you about language? Okay, well, in the case of the forward bias, this positive here repels, so to speak, the positives in the positive side of the diode. So that tends to push whatever empty holes there are in this direction, because the holes are always moving. See, one of the things that people don't really understand is that this hole might be here now, but then it might be over here then later, and they move around. Okay, these electrons, everything's zinging around all the time, so they can kind of migrate, right? So then, if we do that, then now this negative here is going to repel these negatives here. And if there are any engineers watching, the fact that you guys made straight A's in English suggests to me that you should come up with something a little more poetic than the P-N junction. You could have called it, Nirvana or something instead of P-N junction. That's like boring. You guys made A's in English, guys. Come on, be more a little more creative, okay? All right. Well, when this happens, ta-da! The light turns on. Why? Because there's current flow. And I don't care which way you think current flows. Blah, 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 left, right, left, up, down, in, out, bottom, top, plus, minus, forward, backwards. I don't really care, okay? I never talk about it. It doesn't matter. But current will flow in this case, and it's because we're in forward bias, plus touching plus, minus touching minus, kind of squeeze together and zing. All right, well, now there's voltage here. Why? Because there's a pressure in this battery that's keeping these things together. These sides, these pluses and minuses, these holes in the electrons, the charges, whatever you want to call them, they're getting squished together. And it takes pressure to do that. Because if we were to remove this pressure, that would all kind of go and just kind of fade away. But by putting the pressure there, they kind of come back together. We got the P-N junction. Yeah, rah, that's so exciting. And bingo, the light comes on. Fairly straightforward, right? Think magnets. Remember, think magnets. Okay? So, the obvious answer to what happens if we flip it around into reverse bias is, well, the light doesn't come on. Why? Because, very simple, these pluses right here pull these minuses, and they pull them away. So, ding, 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 ding. And these negatives pull these positives away. Whatever. Right? So now, this P-N junction is just kind of not there. And the light bulb turns off. That's it. Right? Okay? That's it. Okay. So when we test a diode with the diode test function, okay, so we take our meter, right, and we put our meter on diode check. We do not put it on ohms. We put it on diode check. It's kind of a bad diode, but hey, whatever. Then that's going to measure in volts. And the number we're looking for is 500 millivolts. 500 millivolts. That's 1/2 volt. 1/2 half volt. Okay, is it going to be exactly that? No. Okay, and it might actually read 0.500 volts. Just depends on the meter. Okay, some meters will say 0.5 volts, some meters will say 500 millivolts. This could go up a little bit, this could go down a little bit, it doesn't really matter. And the way we do it is very simple. We put the black lead on, wait a minute, okay, that'll work. We put the black lead on the negative side. Okay, so the black lead goes there, and the red lead goes to the positive side. And just to keep the education going, the positive side is called the anode. That's the positive side. My daughter just showed up, so hold on. The negative side is called the cathode. Okay, I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. That was some father-daughter stuff involving hair and sleepovers and shopping. So, that's my life. Okay, so let's review here. Diode literally means two nodes. Di means two. Ode, dinode, they didn't call it, they called it a diode, triode, cathode, anode. It's the word node, meaning a point. Silicon, or silica, silicon is glass. Glass is an insulator because it's got really tight bonds in here. These electron covalent bonds are like really super tight because they're zinging around, going everywhere, doing all sorts of stuff, okay? So there's really no way for electrons to go through. Okay, so I'm a laser pointer. So there's no way for electrons to go ding 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 ding. They just can't go through. Okay, they just cannot go through. Here, however, we have a little bit of a hole because we're slightly positive, and it's positive because there's not enough negative things. Here we're slightly negative because there's one too many negative things. Okay, so this is P silica and N silica, or positive or negative silica, blah blah blah. We put two pieces together and we call it a diode. Okay? And the reason it works is because we take the positive side of the battery and we shove it against the positive side of the diode, and all the little positives go ding ding ding, and they sit right here. And then the negatives do the same thing. They go nah. We create this p-n junction, and current flows whichever way you like to think it flows. I don't care. That's AC, but we're not doing AC. So zing zing zing, or zing zing zing. And quite frankly, I don't care. Okay, we can argue about positive flow, negative flow, conventional flow, electron flow. Quite frankly, I don't care. Why? Because I will never go to a contact and say, "Oh, I've got 12 volts here with positive flow." Okay, you don't teach schematics with it. You don't use flow for anything. Okay, unless you're describing something to teach it, but you don't use it in the field ever. Okay, so in the reverse bias situation, that's forward reverse bias, we flip the diode or we flip the polarity or whatever, and now positives pull negatives, bing, away, negatives pull positives away, bing, and light turns off, okay, or whatever, okay. So if we're testing a diode, the diode's testing good, so to speak, then we should get about a half a volt. This is with a silicon rectifier, silicon, okay. And, I need to explain that, don't I? Okay, so half a volt or 500 millivolts or whatever. You're on the diode check. You're not on ohms, okay? The positive side's called the anode. The negative side's called the cathode. And so if we were looking at this on a schematic, it would look like this, because this is the plus side and this is the minus side. It doesn't matter whether it's filled in or not. It can be filled in, it can be not filled in, it doesn't matter, it's the same difference. Okay, these are all the same things. That's what you're going to see on a schematic. And I just said a word that I didn't use earlier that I need to use, and the word is rectify. And the word rectify literally means to make right. Okay? So the words you've seen are words that you know. Correct, direct, resurrect, insurrect, rectification, rectify, and the word rectangle. This is something that a lot of math teachers actually never teach. Put it over here. It's called a rectangle, not a rectangle. Because in math, rect means 90 degrees, and in this particular case, an object that has four 90-degree angles is a rectangle. It's not a rectangle, it's a rectangle. So that word's been there ever since you started learning about squares and rectangles. So that's where we get the 90 degrees, and that's where we get the rectangle. Okay? If you happen to break someone's window, you must rectify the situation. In electricity, we rectify AC to DC. Okay? In religion,